Hi, Matt with etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about the PRP custom second row seat covers. Now this is going to be something that's going to give you this kind of nice polished look to your seats, and also going to give them that extra protection and really contour to your needs in our 2015 Toyota 4Runner. If you have experience with these seat covers, or if you plan on getting them after watching this, let us know what your experience is like, how they're holding up, and what type of daily use you're putting them through. Just let us know in either a comment below or in a review what your experience is like. So what we're really going to be focusing on today is going to be how these covers are going to fit in your 4Runner, and we're going to also, at the very end of the video, show you how to install these, because it can be a longer process, so having any way to help you out is going to go a long way. But next up, I'm just going to remove one of these. They kind of show you what the difference is between these two, what it's going to look like visually. And we can see how these two are really going to compare. So this is what kind of comes standard on your vehicle, and this is what you're going to get. So you can tell this is going to be a lot more seamless. Just overall, I think just cleaner look. And if I move over a little bit, you can see we are retaining some of these same seams. We're actually adding some new ones, but these are, I think, adding more of a aesthetic purpose now. That red stitching is just a little bit more appealing. Now you can get this stitching in different colors if you find something that's just going to match the interior of your vehicle a little bit better. Because we're not going to block anything important. We're not going to block our buckle here. We're not going to block this strap. We're still going to have access to our seat belts. And of course, we're still going to have access to adjusting our headrest too. And that's why it's good to try to match these covers to some of the accents in the interior of your vehicle, because it's just going to make them look a little bit better. But really, it's going to be nice that you can customize this to fit your vehicle's needs. And next up, I want to showcase what it's going to be like to actually use these, that this isn't going to block you or prevent you from using it in the folding features of your seats. You will notice a little bit of a difference though. There might be a little bit of resistance here, just because we have more material now that's going to be rubbing up against one another, since it does kind of have that foam underneath there, and that's going to give it more cushion so it feels a little more comfortable. And putting it back into place, sometimes you'll notice that this buckle right here will get in your way now. You just lift up on it a bit. We'll slide back in. And every now and then I'll notice there's a little bit of bubbling right here, because those two materials are making contact with one another and it's pushing up on it a little bit, but it's pretty minimal. You're not going to notice it really for the most part. And I can actually now lower my seats completely. We can still fold our headrest down, because that lever is not going to be blocked at all. And we're getting a really nice look. And you can even see the back side of this is giving us more of this fabric material. And I just think it looks a little bit more natural back here. And you can take a closer look at how all three of them are going to lay down flat. You'll notice there's a little bit of them popping up around these edges here. That's just going to be something that you find most times with these. It's just more receptive to coming up, since we're going to be moving around this area a lot when you are pushing these down or putting things on top of them. But after a few hot days or just laying heavier items on top of this, it'll start to learn its shape a little bit more. And this will also cover up this center armrest. Now, of course, these plastic sections are not going to be covered up, so this is going to retain their original color, so keep that in mind. But other than that, we can kind of focus on how these feel and the material of them. So they're going to be made of this very durable material. So like if you're someone who is pretty outdoorsy, you get into a lot of grime, dirt, water, whatever it is, this is going to be able to withstand all of that. It can really take a beating. So that also plays into maintaining these too. So you want to make sure you're cleaning them off pretty regularly. And what's nice about these, they're relatively easy to clean. If I just come over here and let's say I just kind of step here, kind of leave a mark. When it comes to wiping these off, just with my finger right there, this wipes off relatively easy. If I came back with a rag or a washcloth that's kind of wet, this would come up no problem. Overall, I think this is going to be a solid upgrade for your 4Runner, especially if you are someone who is pretty outdoorsy. Where you're going to find a lot of grime that's getting inside your vehicle. You just want to make sure it's maintaining, keeping its value, and is also going to still look good even when you're not going on those more outdoorsy trips. And of course, you can get these on the front row seats as well. That's actually the way I would recommend them, just having the full kit. And then you can even get that center console cover too. I think if you have them all paired together, I think that's going to look for a really nice look interior. Now when it comes to the installation, I will say that's going to be something that's going to take you a little bit longer. I'd probably recommend setting aside a day to do that, especially on a warmer day, so you can let these covers kind of be a little bit more malleable, so a little easier to stretch around the seats. But we have plenty of tips and tricks that we're about to show you, so if you're curious about that process, just stay tuned. We'll walk you through it. So where we're going to begin is by taking off these headrests, just by pressing that button right up top. Comes off pretty easy. Now you want to make sure you grab the right cover for the right headrest, because we're going to have these little levers on the side, and when I hold up the headrest here, there's a hole on the side. And the way you can tell that these are going to match up to one another is because that seaming will look pretty identical. Another thing that will be an indicator will be the logo. That logo right here should be on the back side of your headrest. Now that we figured that out, we can put this on, and I'm going to find this is going to be a little bit tight. I'm going to make sure I undo all that hook and loop that's holding it in place for the time being. And just push that over. Something that's going to go a long way with this too is heating up all these seat covers prior to this. Now it's a cold day at etrailer, and I didn't have the opportunity to lay this out in the sun so it could warm up and kind of loosen up a bit. But what you could do if you're in a similar situation is grab a heat gun and just lightly go over the top of this. So it's going to be a little bit more pliable. But if you just kind of work with it some, you'll be able to get it over. Sometimes I'll pull it down like that. If I don't want to damage my seat or tear it up, I'll come over here to the floor, and I'll use that as some resistance so I can get more leverage on it. And before I completely cinch this down, I'm going to find this hole in the side, push down on that, and get this to wrap around that lever. It's going to be something you just got to take a little bit of time with, especially if it is a little bit cool or not loosened up all the way. I'm going to have to wrap that all the way around. And what I'm going to do here is just use that trim tool to apply some tension on here. It might rip a little bit, but this section here won't be visible anyways. And I'm not using a trim tool. You can actually find one of these on our website. Sometimes you could use a flathead screwdriver, but if you're putting this much pressure on it, I wouldn't recommend it because you're probably going to tear something pretty bad. There we go. There. You just tuck that underneath there. So it looks pretty good. I'm liking the look of that. Again, this probably loosened up just a tad bit. I'm just going to apply some tension to this, and then connect this hook and loop on the bottom. There we go. Make sure to do it on the sides too. And if you still got a couple wrinkles on this, just try to pull this through, pull it tight, just work with the material a little bit until you get to a spot that you like. Now I'm just going to put this away for right now because we want to make sure this top section isn't going to be in the way, or we're not going to have the headrest in our way. And this might be a little bit different for you at home. So what I'm going to do next is pull on this little drawstring here, pull up on the seat, And here we're just going to be double checking something. So I'm going to also lower this section down too. And you'll notice there's this little crack I have right here. And this is going to be plenty enough room for my hand to get through here. If I find later on that this isn't enough room, what I'm going to have to do is remove this paneling. All I have to do is get a flathead screwdriver or some type of trim tool to pry up on that, or I can even pull it with my hand. And there's going to be this bolt right here. We're just going to take a socket and wrench, remove that. There's going to be one on both sides. And then we can fully remove this paneling if it is in our way. And before I actually get that cover on, I actually going to move this paneling here. If we scoot this to the side, this will reveal a little screw right there. I'm just going to take a Phillips screwdriver, get that out of here. There it is. I'm going to make sure we don't lose that because we'll need it later on. You can usually just kind of pull that off. You might need a trim tool to kind of get it off the rest of the way, but I'm just going to lower it down here for now. And now I'm actually going to lower this centerpiece. You're just going to grab that little handle on the back of here, right there. That'll be out of your way. And with all that prepped up, we can get the cover on the seat. And something I went back and did was actually raise the seats themselves up. And this is going to give us more room to work now. And now with this cover, you want to make sure you have the correct one. And the way you can tell it's the correct one is if I flip it over this way, you're going to notice there's a hole right there. That hole is going to match up with this little tab or knob on your passenger seat, like this. And we're also going to unzip this. This is going to be the zipper right here. You'll find right next to that hole. Unzip that. We'll be ready to rock and roll then. All right. So what we're going to do is also lower this down. It's going to help us out a bit. Give us more room to work. And now I'm just going to wrap this around. Yep. This is a good starting point. Now I'm just going to adjust it a little bit more so I have something that I think should be a little bit easier for us to work with. Good point to just make sure nothing's getting caught anywhere. Everything's kind of relatively flush. And something I want to point out too, make sure you're in the right track. You want to have these lined up as much as possible. You're going to have these little pockets in your seats at the base. And you want to make sure that these openings on the cover are lining up with it. You're going to have one on this side, and you also have one right over here. You're going to try to get that to line up as much as possible right now. So I tried working with this a little bit, and I did find that I am going to have to remove this panel in my case. You might not have to remove it for yours. So I'm going to be using a 10 millimeter socket and wrench. There you go. We're going to put that to the side. Make sure you keep that because we will reinstall it at the very end. Now, since I've done that on both sides, I can remove this panel. Kind of look at it a little bit. It might have some clips holding it in place, and we can put this off to the side. And we'll make a few more adjustments. We want to pull on the bottom of here. I'm going to use some pliers to do that. You want to make sure you're grabbing something that doesn't have a narrow edge, so something more flat. You don't want any needle nose because that might tear through here a lot easier. Kind of pull a little bit on each section. We'll start just by a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is go up top some, because we want to get this to the point where these can connect and sit back together. I'll pull there some too. There's going to be a couple points that you can even use as reference points to make sure everything is in the correct location. So if you look right here, that isn't perfectly lined up. It's pretty close. So I might even pull here some too. I got the top of the zipper kind of started. Now this is going to take a while. You're just going to have to pull and yank on this until you can get that connection started. And apply a lot of pressure as you pull on here. If you have a friend to help you out with this, it's going to go a long way. I was able to do it by myself, but it took a while. But from there, the rest of this kind of just glides, goes right into place. I might have to grab one section and pull on it some. Something I wanted to point out was when I was using the pliers, I pulled it a little bit too much on one of the sections with the zipper. You just got to watch out for that. Be careful, because now at this pod, we weren't able to get a good connection. I was able to go around it and reconnect it, but yeah, just be careful when you are pulling on this round, the zipper. And finally, to get the top section of this completely secured down, what I'm going to do is lift up on here. You're going to have these little kind of padded sections. We're going to remove that. That's going to reveal the more sticky side of the hook and loop. What the goal is to connect this section to this section. Now, I pulled on it earlier, and look at that, we're still a little bit shy. It will connect, but I'm not liking the way it is connecting. What we're going to do instead is kind of pull on this some more. This section, you have a lot more leeway to kind of pull on it pretty tight. And really, the tighter you get this, it's just going to give you a better fit overall. So this one, I'm putting a little bit more force in, still being mindful, I don't want to tear anything. And now we're going to make that connection. I might even use the pliers a little bit to help me pull on this some, so we can get a good connection. Got it on one section. Kind of just go all the way around it. This corner piece might be a little bit difficult because you got that little tab there. Just gonna work around it. There we go. So it's out of the way. There we go. And we can put our seat up and see how this is looking. And this is looking pretty good. Now there is one spot we need to kind of fix up some. So up here at the top, we're gonna have this section that's going to wrap around these little tabs at the very top. And really, this should be lined up as long as we're lining everything up along the way. So I'm really not having any issues getting that around, applying pressure. And you're going to have a third one right here too. This one might be a little bit tougher just since it's a little bit more low profile. And that's looking pretty good. And then just kind of come back through, make sure it feels nice and smooth. We don't have any bubble gaps. And then we can come back to the very top of it and secure this back into place. And now we're going to move over to the center here. That's going to be the next easiest point to do. We're going to just put that down, and you're going to notice one of these cup holders is missing because to put the cover on here, we're going to have to remove this centerpiece here. So you just remove that cup holder itself. It's going to be this rubberized piece. It just slides out. And there's going to be a little screw in there. Just take a Phillips screwdriver so you can remove that. Get that loosened up. Then I'm going to put those off to the side. Make sure you keep them. And this should just slide right out of place. And with this, we're just going to open up this cover, disconnect all that hook and loop, and start installing it. And you can tell this is going to be able to fit this because just the overall contour of it. And what I'm going to start off with is just this base here, the very bottom. You can tell it has this hook in the loop right here, has an opening on this side, and it's still connected on this side. What I'm going to do is just kind of shove that up underneath this crack here and push up, because this can be a little bit tricky sometimes. As I'm pushing up on that, I'm going to reach my other hand, grab it from the other side, And if you're not careful, there's going to be 2 openings. There's going to be one that's in between this armrest. And there's going to be another opening that actually goes into this plastic reservoir. It'll be a little bit tricky sometimes, so take your time with it. And I might even need to grab some pliers for this. Got the pliers out, and I did start to get this to go through now. So I had to fight a little bit, but we're getting it through now. Slowly but surely. You know, try to get that flat and opened up. I think this is relatively a good spot to be in, so I'm gonna reach over to the other side. Kind of already did on this side a little bit, but I'm just gonna take this edge here, slide that underneath the kind of framing of this. Should kind of just go right into that groove. I might even pull up a little bit on this corner here, get the grab around that edge. And I think that's going to do wonders for us. And then with that like that, just going to make this connection here in the center, pulling on that pretty tight. Get it lined up as much as you can. And before I completely cinch that down, I'm going to go up to the front and pull this through. And this is going to wrap around this opening right here. Now we're going to take this strap, and this is really the pulley. I'm going to make sure I hold the back section, because if I lift this all the way up, that back end is going to go back out the bottom. So we want to make sure that strap comes through this opening. I'm just going to push that pulley strap through here from the inside. And it's going to have this little cover here too, so you might have to scoot that out of your way so you can get that out. Looking much better. And before you put this all the way up, I'm actually going to connect the back end. This right here. This is what I was talking about earlier, making sure you have a hand on it, because if you try to lift this up, a lot of times this will go right back into place and reduce all your hard work to nothing. There you go. That's looking way better. And we're just going to lift this up to make sure this looks good. I might kind of pull on this a little bit. Kind of shift that a little bit if I can. Because a lot of the issues you're probably going to have are going to be right here. So if you can try to get that to look smooth, then this will make it look really nice. Yeah, but I think that looks good for now. And we can put on the cup holders back in place. And it's something to watch out when you do put these cup holders back in place. There are these holes that are going to have to be opened. So just make sure this is lining up properly, because the tabs you're looking for, but you're right here. There's going to be 3 of them. What I'll do sometimes is just have it grab on to the center of that, kind of push forward, and then down. Once that feels good and attached, then we can just check if those holes are lined up and screw it back into place. And we got this in place. Now you might have a few sections like this that are still showing through. The tips I would have for you is maybe just to come back through with some pliers. Be careful when you are pulling on it. It could kind of scuff it up or rip even. Some tips that might help you is coming in with a heat gun, warming this up a little bit at the front section, and maybe even trying to shift this some, but just be careful you don't shift it too far back, because then this section here might start to kind of pop out on you. And we're going to put on the bottom seats now. So I'm just going to lift that up now and start putting this into place. Now the section that we want is going to be that extra wide section. There's going to be a little slit cut into one side of it, like that. And from here, I'm just going to wrap this around. Gonna have it match up with the contours of your seat. Find all those corners. Like that. Just gonna apply some tension to it. Make sure it gets pretty tight. You also want to have that strap right here. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna lead that up to that opening here. There you go. Like that. Because you're gonna want access to this whenever you need to lift your seats back into place. And yeah, once you have this in a pretty good spot, we can move over to securing that string down. To do that, you're just going to find a little strap at the bottom here. Oh, there it is. You're going to run this string through there. Once that's through, just kind of pull it some. You can pull both ends tight. What will help you a lot too is if you have those pliers. I'll probably grab them here in a second. And then I'm going to run the string through this other strap. That's through that little cutout that I pointed out earlier, right here. So just run that string through there. There we go. Just like that. Now I'll go grab some pliers, make sure I can get this nice and snug. And if you got any special knots, you can tie it off like this. There you go. Try to get mine through there. And something we found too, there was this little slit here, and I think this actually wraps around this section here. And at first I thought that was going to impede me from shutting this, but it actually doesn't. You can still shut this and it will latch into place. So I'll shut it real quick. Something we'll notice, a lot of times when you go to shut this, now I've noticed that this buckle kind of pushed down a little bit, so if you just lift it up some, it'll slide a little bit easier. And I'll typically hold my hand here and close this. It'll help prevent a lot of that from bubbling up, because to get this where there's no bubbling at all, it's kind of difficult. You're going to have to get this extremely tight. And right now, I think this is going to be about as good as we can get it. Really, it's just a little bit loose here. And when you sit down on it, you're really not going to notice this at all. But yep, right now it is fully attached back into place. And now we can move over to the next side. And something I almost forgot is the back side of this middle section. And you're going to have these little covers that'll just go right over the top of that. So that's going to have a little cutout, so it doesn't cover up anything important. You're going to avoid that little edge there. It'll secure this down via a hook and loop. Over to the last seat now. I'm just going to pull this up, get that out of my way. Oop. Put it back up, and lower this down. I find it's going to be a little bit easier to lower down. I'll adjust this a little bit too, rest on my knee. And we can put the last cover on. And I already do have this unzipped. It'll just make it easier to work with. I'm just going to slide it over the top. Just matching it with the contours of your seat. It's kind of like we did before. And same thing as last time, I'm going to come to the bottom, kind of pull on this part that's part of your front. We're just going to be pulling it underneath till we get into a good spot. We're still just kind of moving everything around until it's fully lined up the way we want it to be. So after a lot of struggling, we actually got this section here to zip up. Now you're going to have a lot of issues with this area in particular. I recommend if you can get a heat gun or a blower dryer just to heat up this up. because trying to get this zip up can be pretty difficult at times, but if you take your time, you'll be able to get it eventually. And now we'll move over to the base. That's going to go into the seat itself. And we're just going to match this up to the contours. You want this white string to be up top. I'm just going to match it up now. I have to grab onto one edge, pull it through to the other side. Go. You might have to just shift it some. And we're going to come up here to the top once that's in a good spot. Again, we're going to have another one of these slits. And that's going to be designed so you can pull that strap through here. Once you get that to pop out of the way, just kind of give it a nice tug. And now we're going to secure this the rest of the way down. So I'm going to grab one side of my string, find a little loop at the bottom. Looks like it's right here. I'll pull that strap through that little hole. There it is. Yeah, pull on it some. And what I did here, this time I left a little knot. Push it through that knot. Pull on it. You can actually get this pretty dang tight. Or you can come back with the pliers. Snuggle that up a little bit more too. And I went back through and secured this a different way just to make sure it's tight all the way across. And I've tested this out a few times. And then we can just lower this down and make sure everything is still going to be sitting flush. We're not getting any sort of bubbling. And really the last step is just going to be taking off this headrest here, and we're going to put on a little head cover. This one's actually going to have some holes on the bottom there. I'm just going to line that up just like that. That lined up. Just going to pull it over the rest of the way. Try to make sure and none of these sections get tucked under, because it'll be a little bit hard to get them out. Go. And then finally just come back through and cinch it up with that hook and loop all the way across. You can go back through if there's any spots that you want to just clean up a little bit, make it look a little bit nicer. It's looking pretty good there. And finally this little side here too. And this is a good point where you can put the other headrest back on too. Push that all the way down. And then there you have it. You can admire your work now, and congratulations, you got these seat covers installed. But that was just our look at the installation and some of the features of the PRP custom seat covers in our 2015 Toyota 4Runner. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.